When we wear our masks or face coverings, you protect me and I protect you from the spread of COVID-19. But for the best protection against the coronavirus, we must wear and use our masks or cloth face coverings correctly. All persons over age 2 and who can remove their masks themselves should wear one. Before putting on your mask, clean your hands. Your nose and mouth should be covered with no gaps between the mask and your face. Do not touch the mask when wearing it. If you do, clean your hands immediately. Replace your mask when it's damp. Discard disposable masks immediately after use, or wash reusable masks frequently. When removing your mask, do not touch the front. Remove your mask from behind, discard, and immediately wash your hands. Let's protect each other from COVID-19 and wear our masks.
Bermuda. I'm joined at today's press conference by the Minister of Health, Kim Wilson, who will give an update on the continued work of the Ministry of Health in battling COVID-19. We also have the Minister of National Security, Wayne Keynes, who will discuss the murder and other acts of violence which took place this weekend. Minister of Finance, Curtis Dickinson, will discuss the island's financial response to COVID-19 and plan for our economy. I also welcome the newly appointed Minister of Labor, Jason Hayward, who will update us on the unemployment insurance benefit and the work of his newly created Ministry of Labor, ensuring that we protect the rights of Bermudians in the workplace. This holiday weekend, where we remember the contributions of our national heroes, was a distressing time for many in Bermuda. The actions of a few have changed the lives of a family and friends who lost a loved one through the senseless death of a 22-year-old Bermudian. On behalf of the government and the people of Bermuda, I extend our condolences to his family and to his friends. The Minister of Health will now provide an update on the testing which took place over the weekend against the backdrop of more confirmed cases which were reported on Saturday. Minister.
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon. Between Sunday and today, there were 520, I believe that's a typo, that should be Friday. And today there were 528 test results received by the Ministry of Health, and none were positive for COVID-19. Bermuda continues to have 144 total confirmed positive cases. Their status is as follows. There are 7 active cases, of which all are under active public health monitoring, and none are hospitalized or in critical care. A total of 128 have now recovered, and the total deceased remains at 9. The average age of all of our confirmed positive cases is 61, and the age range of all of our positive cases is from 18 years to 101 years. Excuse me. Overall, 56% of all cases are black, 41% are white, and 3% are other or unknown. The source of all local cases is as follows. 41 are imported, 85 are local transmission with known contact, 12 are local transmission with an unknown contact, and 6 are under investigation. I can also provide a brief line of an update regarding the COVID-19 saliva test. These have already been now shipped to Bermuda and should be arriving on island very shortly. At Thursday's press conference, I announced that the Ministry of Health had rolled out a pop-up testing program to make testing more accessible to the public through pop-up testing sites at various marketplace stores as well as city center locations, with more to be announced over the coming weeks. We understand the value of taking services to the people, as we have used this approach very successfully with our annual Flu Express and our Taking It to the Streets initiatives, which gets public health to where the people are. I can tell you that since launching the pop-up testing, over 500 people have taken advantage of this initiative, and I'm extremely impressed by the public's interest in getting tested and hope that that enthusiasm will continue. Remember, the more we test, the better we will contain and control COVID-19. In order to ensure that wait times at pop-up testing venues are as minimal as possible, I would encourage residents wishing to get tested to please book their appointments online in advance. It can literally take you 5 minutes for 2 people to get tested if you pre-book. You can book online via the government website, coronavirus.gov.bm, or call the COVID-19 hotline, which is 444-2498, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., and one of our helpful telephone operators will be happy to make a reservation for you. A full schedule of the testing days and times has been posted to the government website. Other convenient pop-up locations around the island for this week are as follows. Tomorrow at the Anglican Cathedral between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., Thursday, also at the Anglican Cathedral between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., and at Herring Bay Marketplace between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. Friday at the Anglican Cathedral between 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., and at Shelley Bay Marketplace also between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., Saturday at the Somerset Marketplace between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., and Sunday returning back to the Shelley Bay Marketplace between 12 p.m. and 5 p.m. And again, you can see all those details at the government website. For more information about pop-up testing, please, again, you can call 444-2498. Also, if you are a large company of over 30 employees, the Ministry of Health can arrange pop-up testing to come to your workplace. If you're interested in that, for more information, again, contact 444-2498. As we move to phase 3, I feel I must remind people that this is not a green light to abandon those habits which have stood us in such good stead to allow us to have fight COVID-19 so far, namely the wearing of masks as well as the physical distancing. Over the past few days, we have noticed the slip in those good behaviors. This is irresponsible, dangerous, and could have the potential to set us back as we move forward towards a safe reopening of Bermuda. We all want to get to phase 4 and beyond, but this will not happen if we see a rise in positive cases of COVID-19, something which will happen if we do not continue to use the mitigating factors that we've spoken about previously, which is to wear our mask as well as practice physical distancing. Also, we are encouraging people to log on to the Health IQ app, so it's healthiq.bm, to tell us how you're feeling and what you're seeing in the community in terms of the protective measures being taken. Your information is confidential, and it will help us greatly as we transition through the phases. Over 7,000 people have registered thus far, and we need 10,000 people to get the reopening indicator to a green light on our scoreboard. Finally, today I want to draw your attention to some of the Phase 3 guidance, which has been recently created and posted to the government website, again at coronavirus.gov.bm. In particular, I want to go over some of the points for reopening directions for movie theaters, museums, libraries, and similar places of public entertainment. These types of establishments should rigorously follow the practices specified in those protocols, which includes utilizing remote ticketing options, adjusting screening times and opening hours to allow for enhanced cleaning and disinfection, warning clients about booking not to come to the facility if they have any COVID-19 symptoms, ensuring proper physical distancing to allow for 6 feet between patrons in the venue, ensuring that all employees and customers wear cloth face coverings, of course, except for children under the age of 2, regularly and frequently cleaning and disinfecting any regularly touched surfaces, and this includes disinfecting seats and frequently touched areas and surfaces between screenings, events, or groups, making hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, soap and water, or similar disinfectant readily available to employees and customers upon entry at suitable locations, placing readily visible signs at the venue to remind everyone of best hygiene practices, restricting access to restrooms to allow appropriate physical 2 empty seats or 6 feet separation between parties in any row. Additionally, there should be alternative rows between customers so that every other row is left empty. However, 2 or more members of the same household can sit next to each other with 2 seats empty or 6 feet separation on either side. Also, 2 individuals who are not members of the same household but who are attending together can sit next to one another with 2 seats or 6 feet separation empty on either side. There are also various rules for these types of venues who also provide food service also for the patrons, and this can also be found within the guidance, as can the specific health protocols which should be taken by employees of these establishments. And lastly, I would like to remind the public that tomorrow, Wednesday the 17th of June, there will be a Facebook Live session with our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Cheryl Pete Ball, as well as BHB's Chief of Medicine, Dr. Michael Ashton, and that begins at 2 p.m. I invite and encourage everyone to log on to learn more and submit any questions that they may have in advance or during the live broadcast via the government Facebook page. Thank you, Bermuda, and please continue to wear your mask and keep 6 feet with respect to social distancing if you are not wearing a mask. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you so very much, Minister of Health. The news of no new cases following days of testing is certainly welcome news. However, it is important and a reminder that we must continue to keep our guard up by wearing our masks and maintaining our physical distance when out in public and socializing. Everything we have done thus far must continue, whether that is washing your hands, good cough hygiene, or the utilization of hand sanitizer. These are all public health measures that will help us continue to keep this virus at bay. The pop-up testing locations have proven to be extremely popular, and I encourage everyone to visit coronavirus.gov.bm to get the details of locations and times and to book an appointment to get tested today. Even though she's going to be upset for me saying it, even my mom went to go get tested today, and she commented and said it wasn't as bad as I thought, because it is not as bad as you may think. During Phase 3B, which will commence on Thursday, the full range of personal care services will become available. This includes the grooming of beards and waxing services, and massages. As stated last week, public health guidelines will provide for the frequency of tests for personal care service providers engaged in high-risk activities, which to date have not been allowed. For providers of those services who got tested this weekend, including my barber, I and other clients look forward to seeing you later this week. Those who have not yet been tested, please visit coronavirus.gov.bm to book an appointment so you can keep yourselves, your clients, and Bermuda safe. With that, Minister Keynes will now give his update this evening to the country. Minister.
Thank you, Premier. Sadly, this weekend was tragically marred by violence and death. On Friday, there was a major stabbing incident in the parking lot of Marketplace in Southampton. On Saturday, we saw large pockets of young people at John Smith's Bay engaging in serious violent behavior. And on Saturday, there was a firearm incident in the East End which left one man shot and who is recovering in the King Edward Memorial Hospital. And on Sunday, a young man's life was taken in the most violent of circumstances. These are all very troubling developments, and the people of Bermuda should be rightly outraged at such instances that shake the foundation of our community. Again, I take this opportunity to extend my condolences to the young man's family and continue to urge the public to assist where they can in providing the police with information about any of the weekend's incidents. As expected, the beach, park, and water all saw increased usage over the weekend. However, as we saw tensions from antisocial behavior and gang activity, we regrettably disturbed what should have been a very peaceful holiday weekend. Over the 3-day period, the COVID-19 response team mobilized troops to conduct island-wide presence patrols, vehicle checkpoints, and static beach observation. As a follow-on from this weekend's disturbances, here are some critical points to note as it relates to the Royal Bermuda Regiment support. To be clear, the Royal Bermuda Regiment's powers are limited to COVID-19 emergency regulations. They do not have police powers. Their role is to support the Bermuda Police Service in an advisory and a community engagement role, and to provide assistance in enforcing social distancing, curfews, etc. When situations become tenuous with the public, as they did at John Smith's Bay, the Bermuda Police Service are notified to attend. Please note that immediately after the St. John's Smith's Bay incident, the regiment provided support by establishing vehicle checkpoints in the surrounding areas, including Watch Hill Park, Blue Hole Hill, and Pink Beach, to gather information on suspects. On Sunday, the Royal Bermuda Regiment also provided immediate assistance following the fatal stabbing in the vicinity of the Warwick Rubis gas station. The Royal Bermuda Regiment personnel provided assistance in the form of first aid, security at the scene, and pursuit of the suspect vehicle. In support of the Bermuda Police Service, the Royal Bermuda Regiment maintained security surrounding the crime scene, allowing investigators to work throughout the evening. Turning to our Coast Guard. The weekend saw hundreds of pleasure craft on the water. As it stands, a total of 2,571 vessels were either engaged or observed on the water this past weekend. Please note that it was impossible to enforce social distancing at Paradise Lakes at the height of each day due to the number of boats and people involved. We will have to work on our policing plan for this weekend and going forward with reference to Paradise Lakes. As a result, there were 4 summonses issued for breaching the COVID-19 regulations. There were 23 citations issued for unlicensed vessels, speeding in a 5-knot no-wake zone, and not displaying navigation lights. Switching to the Bermuda Police Service. On Friday, the 12th of June 2020, there was a disturbance using bladed articles and knives, and a male was stabbed outside Mr. Chicken in Heron Blade Plaza in Southampton. The incident occurred approximately at 3 p.m. with 3 subjects involved in the affray and 1 person being stabbed as a result. The suspects have been arrested. Saturday, June 13th, 2020, disturbance at John Smith's Bay with approximately 75 to 100 young people. There were bladed articles, helmets, and bottles being used. This incident occurred at approximately 7:55 p.m. Upon police attendance, the disturbance ended and there was massive dispersing. 2 arrests have been made so far. Further suspects have been identified and will be the subject of arrest. Saturday, the 13th of June, there was a firearm incident. There was a man shot and at Governor's Alley in St. George. At approximately 9:38 p.m., police received an initial report that a male was shot in St. George's. The victim turned up at the King Edward Memorial Hospital via private motor car. The suspects are still being sought. Saturday, the 13th of June 2020, reports of a firearm incident in Middletown and Pembroke. A firearms incident has been officially declared. At approximately 11:03 p.m., police received several calls reporting the sounds of gunshots in the Middletown area. Callers were unable to provide if anyone had been shot or injured. Shell casings were found at the scene, and the investigation is currently progressing. Sunday, June 14th, 2020. There was a stabbing of a male at the Rubis service station, South Road in Warwick. At approximately 7:15 p.m., a male arrived at the Rubis service station, South Road in Warwick, in the company of 3 male friends, where he was attacked and stabbed by 3 males and later succumbed to his injuries. 3 suspects for this murder are being sought. 1 person has been arrested and is in police custody. The police response: there are increased reassurance patrols in place across the island, and community outreach work is in progress. The next update is the Department of Corrections. On June 11th, the Department of Correction commenced Phase 3 of its recovery plan. On-site inmate visits continue to be suspended. However, virtual visits and phone calls with family and friends continue. 80% of the non-security staff have returned to work and have staggered scheduling. Contractors have been allowed into the facilities. However, they must follow the new visiting protocol, which includes temperature testing. COVID-19 testing took place for inmates during the last 2 weeks of May, and all results were negative. The Department of Corrections staff are conducting COVID-19 testing at Southside. Designated health services staff have been trained to conduct in-house testing. Staffing levels have not been significantly impacted, and staff continue to carry out their duties professionally despite the challenges that they face. The Department of Corrections continue to stock PPE supplies and other COVID-19 related supplies and source replacements from various vendors. The supplies are issued as required as per the guidance of the Bermuda Health Department. I can confirm that 91% of the inmates have been tested for COVID-19. I can also thankfully inform the public that there have been no confirmed cases of COVID-19 among staff or inmates. Lastly, turning to the Gang Violence Reduction Team. The Gang Violence Reduction Team, led by Pastor Leroy Bean, continued to deploy strategies to ensure that we are meeting the needs in terms of community outreach, education, training, and direct intervention. On June 11th, the Gang Violence Reduction Team activated the Coordinated Crisis Response Team as the normal holiday protocol. The Coordinated Crisis Response Unit was deployed several times over this past weekend to identify hotspots to support our community through emotional hardship. The public may recall that this unit is set up to assist family members, relatives, or witnesses of violent instances through times of crisis. The CCR unit made several support visits to the hospital several times this weekend and also made home visits to support families affected by this weekend's violence. The Coordinated Crisis Response Team has systems, structures, and trained staff. They are in place to provide immediate emotional support to the affected families and to provide immediate triage in order to connect families with long-term support through counseling services and support groups. Between Thursday, June 11th and June 15th, the Gang Violence Reduction Team increased its street outreach work and visited targeted neighborhoods. The team have been working around the clock to directly mediate tensions and conflicts between individuals and groups. The team have spoken with various individuals throughout this holiday weekend and have given support to the Bermuda Police Service and community organizations where it has been needed. It is not appropriate for the government to provide detail on the particulars of this outreach in order to protect the confidentiality and security of those individuals willing to participate. The public can be assured, however, that the outreach work of the Gang Violence Reduction Team connects many at-risk individuals to the necessary neighborhood resources and long-term case management. The Gang Violence Reduction Team will continue to execute our multi-pronged plan with all our community partners. On Friday, June 19th, I will give a full ministerial statement on the work of the Gang Violence Reduction Team in Parliament. I must emphasize that one point: bringing harm to others and instilling fear in the public will not be accepted under any circumstances. We will continue to push back against those who insist on bringing violence and disorder to our country. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you, Minister Keynes. And also to note that we are joined by the Police Commissioner this evening, who is also on hand to answer any questions which we may have afterwards. The events this weekend serve to remind us that the work is never ending if we are to address the root causes of the violence and antisocial behavior in our community. These are systemic issues that require a targeted and deliberate approach. The government's increased investments in education, training, mental health, and programs like Redemption Farms, as well as new programs for those people who have aged out of the Department of Child and Family Services, will be continued, because it is through these programs and our focus on dismantling systemic racism that we will affect the change we need to see in our young people. As we've moved through each phase, our goal was to make sure that we open our economy safely and at the same time put Bermudians back to work. The Minister of Finance, Curtis Dickinson, will give details around the work necessary to support those in Bermuda financially and also his efforts in reinvigorating the Bermuda economy. Minister Dickinson.
Thank you, Premier. Good evening. Bermuda has made considerable progress over the past few months fighting COVID-19. We've seen fewer positive cases, our economy is beginning to open up, people are going back to work, and our lives are slowly transitioning to a new normal. Our diligence is paying off, and while this is encouraging, we must remember that the pandemic has not gone away and people are still adversely impacted by it and require our support. On May 28th, I provided an update to the general public on the continuing actions being taken as part of the Ministry of Finance's COVID-19 fiscal plan. That update covered 3 specific areas: the unemployment benefit, the Economic Advisory Committee, and the National Pension Scheme. Today, I am pleased to provide a further update on the Ministry of Finance COVID-19 fiscal plan, as Bermuda continues to ease restrictions relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the onset of the pandemic, the Ministry of Finance has continuously stepped up efforts to provide support to deal with health emergency needs and assist individuals and businesses. As additional sectors of the economy are now opening, and with Phase 4 pending, we continue to assess and implement additional measures as part of our plan to bring further strength and stability to our economy in a fair and equitable manner that appropriately takes into account the needs of the people of Bermuda. The Ministry of Finance COVID-19 fiscal plan has provided a timely and targeted fiscal stimulus to various components of our economy as needed. Already, significant public resources have been directed to strengthen the healthcare sector and to support affected workers and economic sectors. We have quickly taken appropriate steps to ensure the availability of emergency financing to supplement reduced revenues and COVID-19 related expenditures. Actions taken in this regard include executing agreements for $170 million of credit facilities with local financial institutions. Further preparations have already commenced to issue long-term government debt in the global capital markets, which will allow for the financing of these and other facilities, as well as effective management of the economic fallout from the crisis. Subject to market conditions, this financing may also involve the refinancing of current government bonds at more favorable interest rates. Recognizing that helping individuals in our community during this challenging time was a key priority, the government quickly introduced an unemployment benefit to assist people who lost their jobs due to restrictions imposed as a result of the pandemic. The Ministry of Finance has played a key role in this scheme, and we have paid benefits to over 9,700 persons for a total cost to date of approximately $38 million. With the mandatory shelter-in-place restrictions being lifted, I can advise that more than 3,500 persons have already gone back to work and are now off the program. However, to further assist those still not yet employed, the government has decided to extend the unemployment benefit for another 4 weeks, with the maximum benefit now being 16 weeks. The cost to extend this benefit is estimated between $6 and $10 million. The National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act of 1998 was amended to permit a person under the age of 65 who is not retired and who participates in a private defined contribution pension plan or local retirement product to voluntarily withdraw up to $12,000 from the period that the act was brought into force on the 1st of June until the 30th of June 2021. To date, the following applications have been made and approved. Total applications received, 4,807. Total number approved, 972. The total value of applications approved, $10,955,501. The National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act of 1998 was also amended to permit a person who has reached the normal age of 65 and is retired to withdraw up to 25% of their pension account balances. To date, the following applications have been made and approved. Total applications received, 40. Total number approved, 38. Total value of applications approved, $857,292. Following numerous requests from the public received by the Ministry of Finance and the Pension Commission, I am pleased to advise that additional amendments will be made to the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act of 1998 and respective regulations to increase the scope of coverage and provide additional access to plan members as follows. 1, we're going to remove the requirement for a member not to be retired for those persons seeking a $12,000 refund. 2, we're going to remove the requirement for persons to be retired for those seeking a 25% refund. And 3, we're going to remove the requirement for persons to be retired for those seeking a small pension refund. The government recognizes persons with financial need should not be restricted based upon whether they have retired or not. The main criteria in the type of refunds I have just mentioned should be whether they have met the age requirement or not. It is intended that these legislative amendments will be made in the current legislative session. The National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act of 1998 will be further amended to allow for a suspension of employee and employer contributions for a 12-month period commencing on the 1st of July of 2020 and ending on the 30th of June of 2021. The bill will be debated on Friday, June 19th in the House of Assembly. Participating employees will benefit from a 5% increase in their take-home pay. Amendments to the Contributory Pension Act of 1970 will also be made to allow for employees, employers, and self-employed persons to suspend payment of their social insurance contribution for the whole of the suspension period beginning the 1st of July of 2020 and ending on the 30th of June 2021. This proposal will provide further relief to employees, about $35.92 per week or $143.68 a month. This bill will also be debated on Friday, June 19th in the House of Assembly. The government has implemented further emergency measures to assist businesses that have a pressing need for financial relief as a result of this pandemic. The payroll tax filing deadline was extended from April 15th, 2020 until May 15th, 2020. Approximately 1,250 businesses took advantage of this extension. Penalties and fees that would normally apply for that period were waived. For local companies and permit companies that were not able to facilitate their legislative filings and payments electronically, the deadline for filing and fees in relation to corporate reporting and taxes was extended to the 30th of June of 2020. 1,040 companies have taken advantage of this concession, and $850,000 in fees were deferred. Current penalties and fees that would normally apply for that period are also being waived. On May 21st, 2020, the government announced further short-term relief from payroll tax to assist the restaurant and bar sectors. During this quarter ending the 30th of June 2020, payroll tax has been set at a 0 rate for the restaurant and bar sectors, and these businesses have ceased deducting payroll tax from employees during this period. The fiscal implication of these actions will be a reduction in government revenue estimated at between $750,000 and $1 million. However, we anticipate that this relief will ease some of the pressure on restaurants and bars and especially lessen the pain being experienced by many Bermudians who work in this sector. To assist with preparations for the threat of COVID-19, the customs tariff was amended during the budget session to provide duty relief for personal protective equipment and supplies. Since the 11th of March 2020, when this amendment was brought into force, $1.5 million in customs duty relief has been given. On May 20th, the government announced that the Customs Department will, with immediate effect, allow retailers and other commercial importers to apply for duty deferments of up to 6 months on imported goods, business goods, subject to a minimum surcharge. Import duty is normally payable at the time each import declaration is made to customs. We recognize that upfront duty payment can place a strain on a business's cash flow and that buyer demand is likely to be significantly impacted by the fallout from COVID-19. Duty deferment will allow customs traders, in particular retailers and customs clearing agents, to increase the efficiency of payment handling and the management of their cash flows. Long-term duty payment deferral for more than 6 months is also now available in certain circumstances. Employers who take up the benefit allowed by the amendments to the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act of 1998, which was previously highlighted in relation to its impact on employees, will have a reduction in operating expenses, approximately 5% of their payrolls. Total National Pension Scheme contributions are approximately $250 million per year. Participating employers will also benefit from a reduction in operating expenses of $35.92 per employer per week, or about $143.68 a month, in relation to the amendment to the Contributory Pension Act that was also previously highlighted for its impact on employees. Total CPF contributions are approximately $113 million per year. It should be noted that if the suspension of contributions is taken up across the public and private sectors, it will provide both relief and stimulus to families and businesses. The stimulus to the economy will be generated if some of the savings are converted to consumer spending in the local economy and business investment in infrastructure and improvements. With respect to direct financial support to small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, the Bermuda government, together with Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, developed the Business Sustainability and Continuity Funding Program in response to the impact of COVID-19 on Bermuda's SMEs. The program, which will be in place until the end of 2020, or until the funds are fully deployed, totals $24 million, funded by a $12 million grant from the Bermuda government and $12 million by BEDC from its allocated funding. The Relief Funding Program consists of a range of financing products for businesses to take advantage of, such as a BEDC direct microloan, as well as Relief Micro Grant, a BEDC guarantee for overdrafts from banks, BEDC guarantees for loans from external entities such as banks, credit unions, private companies, and individuals. At this time, government has provided the BEC with $4 million of the $12 million grant that was mentioned previously. The BEDC has directly assisted 54 businesses with funding over the last 8 weeks and are actively processing more applications. As has been stated many times during the crisis, the unprecedented nature of this pandemic has resulted in significant national economic challenge for countries globally, including Bermuda. Thus, as part of the process for development and implementation of our plan for economic strengthening and stability, we are utilizing the strong public-private partnerships which exist in Bermuda and the well-established network we have with overseas persons and entities. I've received valuable input from individuals and agencies such as the Bermuda Business Development Agency and the Bermuda Monetary Authority, as well as the wider business community within our island. In addition, I've also been able to draw on the expertise and long-standing knowledge of members of the Fiscal Responsibility Panel and the Financial Policy Council. These entities have provided input on matters relating to the impact of COVID-19 has had on the fiscal policy and financial stability, and has also provided strategic initiatives for future growth and development in Bermuda. Getting ongoing input from all of these sources, which include persons with extensive experience and expertise in Bermuda and/or overseas, has been and continues to be very beneficial to me and to Bermuda. I would like to express my sincere thanks to those persons who provided support in that regard. In previous press conferences reporting on COVID-19 matters, I have highlighted the Economic Advisory Committee, which was specifically formed to provide advice on actions that will assist Bermuda businesses negatively impacted by this global crisis, and also provide input on initiatives to develop more opportunities for employment and create increased economic activity and government revenue. At its most recent meeting held last week, the EAC focused on quick wins which would stabilize and/or grow the international business sector, a significant contributor to public and private sector income in Bermuda. Also, the EAC has focused on additional proposals which could assist the hospitality and retail sectors, which employ a significant number of employees and whose short-term prospects are still quite dire. As previously stated, we have taken a significant number of emergency and short-term actions to provide relief to individuals, households, and businesses which have been hard hit by the economic fallout from COVID-19. However, we recognize that our strategies have to include all sectors that contribute to Bermuda. Support has already been provided. The input provided at that meeting, among other things, provided additional perspectives on matters that were already being considered or needing consideration, and allowed me to have further constructive dialogue with my team and with other cabinet ministers for timely progression of key initiatives. In our next meeting, it is intended that the focus will be on additional actions to support small and medium-sized enterprises. It is also proposed that there will be a discussion on the work that is being done to refine our economic modeling. During this period, the Ministry has had interactions with the rating agencies, and we are pleased that both Moody's Investor Services in May and S&P back in April have affirmed Bermuda's ratings. These ratings actions serve as an independent endorsement of the actions we are taking to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. However, we realize there is far more work to do in addressing the unprecedented challenges posed by COVID-19. The Ministry of Finance stands ready to take further measures as needed and as developments unfold. In closing, I will once again thank our essential workers, everyone who is on the front line to ensure our health and well-being, and all those persons who are involved in the work to assist persons and businesses dealing with the challenges caused by this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. As you have shared, there is much work going on to provide relief to Bermudians and Bermuda's businesses that are battling the economic impacts of this pandemic. As I've said over the past few weeks, employers who are reopening their businesses must put Bermudians first. Likewise, Bermudians who are asked to return to work should do so and should not be collecting unemployment benefits. It is not appropriate for employers to deny work to Bermudians, and if we learn of instances where Bermudians have refused to return to work in order to continue to receive the unemployment benefit, this behavior will be addressed appropriately. I now welcome the Minister of Labor to the podium to provide his first update to the country since his appointment. Minister Haywood.
Good evening. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many businesses across the island were forced to close their doors, since which many businesses have reopened. As a result of those closures, through the period of shelter in place, over 9,700 individuals were out of work, and many millions of dollars have been paid out in benefits from the unemployment fund. Although all sectors were hit hard, with large numbers of persons unemployed, some sectors were hit particularly hard. The top 5 largest job losses during shelter in place are as follows. Restaurants with 1,815 employees, hotels with 1,345 employees, construction with 1,256 employees, retail with 991, and small businesses with 921. As the economy has slowly reopened, many persons have been reemployed. As of the most recent update, a total of 3,577 individuals have returned to work. The numbers of reemployed is great news for Bermuda. However, with this good news, equitable employment practices happening in our country. From the 30th of March to the 5th of June 2020, I can report that the Labor Relations Section has received 409 labor-related queries. In some instances, there are reports that employers may be discriminating against Bermudians. I can confirm that of the total of these queries received, 14 are related to work permit holders being retained or recalled to work over Bermudian workers. I will break these 14 queries down into further details. 10 were public observation, general inquiries. 1 was referred to the Department of Immigration. 1 was investigated with no further action taken. 2 others were received, 1 of which is currently under investigation. While we strongly believe the majority of businesses are treating Bermudians fairly, there may be a few employers that will discriminate against Bermudians. If this practice is occurring, I ask those responsible to stop immediately. As we seek to further open up our economy for business, we urge employers to ensure that Bermudians are given equitable treatment. It must be noted that employment practices in response to the pandemic have not been uniform across all sectors. For example, it is understood that employees in the international business sector have largely remained employed and continue to work remotely. Other businesses have experienced similar success, and we thank them for their efforts to keep their staff employed. The Premier recently announced that Cabinet agreed to extend the unemployment benefit program for another month to support our people and provide them with an added layer of security as businesses reopen and our economy begins to move again. To assist employees which were laid off, terminated, or made redundant as a result of COVID-19, the unemployment benefit was introduced. The unemployment benefit came into effect on the 24th of March 2020, and the application period will end on the 30th of June 2020. The unemployment benefit provides a weekly benefit of up to $500 to eligible persons, including work permit holders, for up to 12 weeks. The government will extend these benefits, but not the application deadline, to allow persons to receive further support while the country moves towards the new normal with the gradual reopening of the economy during Phase 4. Additionally, following engagement with industry associations, the government will also table legislation this week to amend the Employment Act 2000. The legislation will amend the portion of the Act with respect to layoff due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic resulting in the state of emergency. The change will exclude the period from 1st April to 30th of June 2020 from the calculation of after which a layoff is deemed to be a termination for redundancy. The existing provisions of the Employment Act would then apply for severance pay for those employees not recalled at the end of the 4-month period starting from 30th of June 2020. The purpose of this amendment is to protect both employees and employers in these unprecedented times. In the face of the global pandemic, employees should not lose their benefit entitlement of redundancy pay under the Act. This must be protected. On the other hand, employers with little or no cash and significantly lower revenues due to the pandemic should not be forced into bankruptcy by paying these benefits. A compromise must be reached. This move represents a balanced approach to provide both groups an opportunity to adapt to the new normal as we go through Phase 3 and work towards entering Phase 4. It should be noted that the concerns of the Bermuda Hotel Association have not been ignored, and the government will be working with industry partners to find a solution to the specific problems that they are experiencing. The government will continue to work with all stakeholders to allow Bermuda to get through these difficult times together. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for that update. And it's clear that the work of this government continues through the actions of the Minister of Labor. As schools around the island prepare to close, summer day camps will be opening. The Minister of Community Affairs and Sports, the Honorable Levita Fogo, last week announced the opening of government camp registration. However, within a few hours, the spaces were all taken and a waiting list established. This has caused anxiety amongst parents who are looking for safe summer activities for their children. The ministry is looking closely at how it can accommodate more students, working with the Ministry of Health. Camps have instituted protocols that are in keeping with the Ministry of Health's guidance, as well as best practices from leading global health organizations. There are fewer spaces than normal this year to ensure physical distancing requirements are adhered to. However, as has been stated, we are looking to make sure that we can expand these services, as we know this is something that is desired by a great many parents, and certainly in a time of economic distress, more affordable programs to make sure that our students can be engaged in enriching activities, and also to provide for those college students who may be home and may not have the opportunity to work due to some canceled internship opportunities, we believe is a win-win, and we're exploring how we can expand those particular services. As I close, I must thank all those who continue to work on the front lines of our protection against this pandemic. For those who have worked tirelessly, whether you are public health professionals, a member of one of Bermuda's testing labs, a medical professional, or a technical support member, or a member of the public service who ensured services remain available to the general public. Your selfless contribution is appreciated by a grateful country. We have come a long way, and we still have a very long way to go. We are a community that must successfully move forward together, and as long as we remain united, I'm confident that we will make it through this pandemic. I now welcome any questions that members of the media may have.
Good evening, everyone. Maya Palacio here for Media Maya. My first question, July 1st is the tentative move to phase 4, and with that, the re-entry of flights. So for Bermudian citizens looking to travel back home, do they also need to obtain a 72-hour negative test before boarding their flight?
Thank you for that question. The format, as you would have indicated, as Minister De Silva indicated last week, we are still in the final stages of implementing what the process will be for incoming and ex persons coming into Bermuda, and that includes local residents as well. So there will be a requirement for testing for persons that enter Bermuda.
Testing upon arrival, not testing prior to, but all persons will be tested upon arrival.
All persons be tested upon arrival, but the 72 hours getting negative before boarding the flight to Bermuda is for everyone as well, or do Bermudian citizens have to take that?
Well, like Minister De Silva said, we are still going through the final stage of that. Many of the airlines will have that as a requirement. Okay. So we're looking at all of those possibilities. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So I think my next question will be for Minister Keynes. Will anyone from Canada be able to come to the island to do the biometrics for students studying in Canada, as this is now required for visa applications and renewals, but the representative wasn't able to come in May as scheduled, and people are wondering?
Maya, that now falls under the portfolio with Minister Hayward, but I can simply say that remains a work in progress. As you know, biometrics, we were dealing with the Canadian government, and at the appropriate times, they would set up an arrangements with people. They would book online, and then after they booked online, the representative from the Canadian government will come to Bermuda. Our borders are not open as yet, and as soon as we have the opportunity to open up our borders and it's safely, a process is put in place, we believe that we can reconvene doing the biometric testing in Bermuda.
Thank you very much. My next question will also be for you, Minister Keynes. When can families expect the prisons to allow visiting hours again?
There is no time for us to look at visiting it. I think phase 4 is when we think the earliest we can go back. The main thing that we want to do is to make sure that the correction staff are safe and that that the inmates remain safe. We're looking at policies and procedures, but we have undertaken to do it remotely, so it's not like they will not have access to their families. And we do know that people want contact and want to see their loved ones, and as soon as it is practicable, we would like to recommence that, but we're looking at maybe in phase 4.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
My next question will go to Minister of Finance. How long will the payroll taxes be deferred for restaurants?
That's a fairly difficult question to answer. I think inasmuch as the industry continues to need support, then we will give consideration to providing relief. We have taken the view that we're going to try it on a quarter by June. It's the first quarter that we're considering it, and we'll see how things go. The initial decision was based on us being in shelter in place and there being limited activity at restaurants. Now that we're opening the island back up and there's a bit more traffic, although not back to normal levels, the need for support is probably not as severe, but there's still a need. So we'll consider it on a quarter by quarter basis.
Okay. And a follow-up for that question would be, you mentioned earlier that it could be up to like $1 million loss for government in that. What date range was that $1 million loss?
That was from the 1st of April through the end of June.
Thank you. And my last question also goes to you, Minister of Finance, is with the committees like the Economic Advisory Committee put up, is there any possibility of young Bermudians being put on these ongoing committees, like to either gain experience through the committees as well, just to learn something from them?
Thanks for that question. I think the way that we're trying to get young persons' involvement is through some of the subcommittee work. And what I will do tomorrow at our meeting is I will emphasize to the committee members that it is my desire that they cast a wide net to bring younger people's involvement into the committee. I know that there is work that's being done or submissions that are being made to the forum, the online forum in the government portal. Those persons who are sending in ideas are not identified by their age, but I'm almost certain that there are young people who are suggesting ideas in that forum. I would also go against the Premier in this one, and I will give you an email address, my office email address, where if there are young persons who would like to be considered to work with the committee, they can send an email to my office, and we will try and find a way of putting them to work.
Email address now?
I've got to get the email address. It's a brand new email address.
No problem. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you, sir. Just to confirm, you said I have 2 questions tonight.
That's one.
Just trying to bring a little humor. Premier, my first question to you: have the hoteliers indicated the number of bookings that guests have? Are they receiving when the airport opens up?
I have not heard that, and so I'm sure that the Bermuda Tourism Authority will be able to assist in conjunction with the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. But I think it's important for us to note that just because the airport's opening doesn't mean there's going to be 10 planes in the airport on July 1st. The fact is that there's still a very large, I don't want to say restrictions on travel, but the fact is it's still not an easy place to go visit. It's not you just drive into the airport, and hop on a plane. There is a process to make sure that we keep Bermuda safe. That, of course, is going to lead to decreased demand. There's an air schedule which is out, which is showing that during the month of July, there's only going to be anticipated 3 airlines that will be flying to Bermuda from 3 gateway cities, and only 1 city in the United States. So it's not a wide variety, and of course there will be less bookings in particular hotels just because there is not the particular airlift inside of those particular places.
I'm glad you answered that. American Airlines and JetBlue will not be servicing Bermuda until August. They were not aware that Bermuda Airport was opening up in July. did someone drop the ball in making contact with our airline partners?
Oh, absolutely not. There's been contact that's been made with airline partners. So it's not a question of they were not aware. Different airlines have different requirements. For instance, American Airlines was aware as one of our largest serving partners, but American Airlines has a 60-day notification requirement. So the challenges of which American Airlines we are having with American Airlines here are also replicated in other countries in the region, as was mentioned at our call with the CARICOM heads of government. So it's different airlines have different requirements. It's not a question of dropping the ball. Our first responsibility is to make sure that we're not marching to someone else's drumbeat, but we're marching to the drumbeat of which is going to make sure we keep our country safe. We followed, as I said on Thursday, a more aggressive timeline. It's a balance between the need to balance our economy versus balancing the health of our country, and we're moving in that direction. But I certainly would reject the issue of balls being dropped. I think that persons have continued to communicate with the airlines. They have stated their particular requirements. Certainly, we would love if all airlines were flying. They have their own separate requirements, and we're not going to make our decisions for the health of our economy based upon other persons' considerations.
Thank you. My third question is for Minister Haywood. Welcome to the podium, and congratulations on your position.
Thank you.
It is understood that technical officers in the Ministry of Immigration were caught off guard by the amount of applications that were denied, and TNN understands that over 100 applications were denied for work permits. Can you give a category on where these numbers sit?
What I've asked the technical officers to do is monitor the appeals that actually come in from whatever denials that were made, and we'll handle those on a case-by-case basis. But in terms of a widespread volume of denials, I'm not sure how accurate that is, but I've asked employers if there have been denials that they can submit their appeals to the proper process.
Thank you. I have a question for the Commissioner, my fourth question. Commissioner, TNN has reliable source information that some arrests were made in the, matter of fact, 3 arrests were made in the murder investigation from Sunday night. Can you confirm and deny this? And is it true that these individuals are persons of interest, and will there be court dates pending?
Trevor, obviously we've made substantial inquiries, and we do believe that 3 parties were involved. I'll not disclose who we have in custody at the moment, except to say that investigations are ongoing. We're at a very early stage at present. We're establishing the facts, and obviously when substantial development occurs, we'll announce that. I'll also be meeting with the family of the young man who passed tomorrow, not just to extend our condolences, but to give them an update in regards to the investigation, because I think it's important and right that they're aware before perhaps the rest of the community.
Another question for you, sir. There's been a group that sent out information last night looking to up the reward for getting information for the missing young lady, Chevelle Burgess, Dylan Burgess. I've understood also that rumors that a reward will be possibly coming forward. Can you give any indication to this information?
Yeah, I have made an announcement, Trevor, that there'll be a press conference tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Just in regards to the investigation into Chevelle's disappearance, we still have a 39-year-old male on bail, and investigations are proceeding in regards to his potential involvement. And obviously there are a number of searches that still take place for Chevelle. One of the things I'll touch on is the events of this weekend actually detracted the Bermuda Police Service from being able to give its full focus to these searches, albeit they continue now. And yes, there is indication that a substantial reward will be announced tomorrow, and I'll give details at the press conference then.
Why would you think? Why would you say? Would you say a reward of $3,000 will pique interest and to up the antics? Would you think, especially as we're going through hard times, we'll gather some information for you?
I think, Trevor, it's best to wait till tomorrow. We're engaged with Chevelle's family about what we're doing, and they support us. It is my clear belief that there are parties in the community that know what has happened to Chevelle, and where she is now. And part of the brief tomorrow will be to explain that and obviously offer what we are going to put forward to encourage that information to come to us.
Thank you much.
Good evening, Don Burgess, Bermuda Broadcasting. Mr. Premier, the government is trying hard to reopen the economy and get Bermudians back to work. Many Bermudian parents, as you talked about earlier tonight, with school-age children need their kids to attend summer camps or summer schools so that the parents can go back to work. We are hearing that most of the summer camps are now full due to the crisis, and particularly with no one taking overseas holidays this summer. Should camps prioritize Bermudian children over guest workers' children so that Bermudian parents can get back to work quickly? And how can the government ensure Bermudians come first in the queue?
Well, I'm not going to necessarily comment on and start regulating summer camps inside the country, and that's not certainly an area which I want to go in. But what I will say is that in my remarks, I acknowledge that there needs to be more particular options. This was a conversation of which I had today with the minister who has responsibility, and I look forward to her possibly making an announcement on that as early as this Friday in the House of Assembly on the expansion of which may take place, because there are more persons that need to be accommodated, and I want to make sure, especially in a period of economic distress, that we are meeting the needs of the parents inside of our community.
Okay, but because you've talked about how jobs should prioritize getting the Bermudian workers back to work over the expat workers, but if the expat workers have the camps and the Bermudian workers don't, doesn't that run counter to what you want to have?
Well, what I would say is that the specific things of which you were speaking about are governed under the laws of this country and policies of which are issued underneath laws. I don't necessarily know if there is a law regarding how summer day camps are apportioned. What I can say is from the summer day camps that the government controls, I'm not entirely certain whether or not there is particular entrance requirements for that. I do not know. So I'm saying that from a basis I do not know. But from a broader question, the fact is that there is more demand than the supply of which we currently have. And that is why the minister who has responsibility for this, the Minister of Community Affairs and Sport, who are working with the Ministry of Health, and to see how we can go ahead and expand these particular offerings to provide more support during parents during this particular time. It was a conversation of which we've had. It's in the early stages. We recognize there's lots of different things which need to form a part of that, whether it be for the various facilities. Some of these are held in school buildings undergo renovations, and other things are in the summer. What other types of facilities can we provide, making sure we get the persons who can provide those services, making sure that we keep our students and our camp counselors safe. So as I said, that is a process that we're going through. We recognize that there is a shortage. There's a shortage every year, so we're clear. There's a shortage every particular year. And so for this particular case and instance, I think that also it's a question of entrepreneurial spirit. There's no restriction on summer camp. So persons can start recognizing that there are restrictions as long as they apply by the rules which are there. So from this particular perspective, it is a challenge, and the government will work on addressing this challenge as best as we can.
All right, thank you very much. Several of you could possibly answer this one. On both Bermuda Day and Heroes Day holiday weekends, there were 2 beach fights involving large groups of young people. What factors, if any, do you feel that the COVID-19 preventative measures like curfews, social distancing, and shelter in place may have added to the mental stress as an added trigger to these incidents? And does the gun and knife violence over the weekend provide further proof that gang tensions are escalating?
I think there are a number of factors. When you said a lot in that question with reference to, let me just be plain. As a community, we saw behavior at the weekend that was distressing on a number of levels. We saw young people that were at John Smith's Bay. I spoke to a principal of a middle school, and she indicated that there were a number of her students that were present. There were a number of students celebrating their high school graduation. As a country, we saw a mirror of who we are. And we have to accept responsibilities that some things have to change within our communities and with our homes. The weekend was a clarion call for all of us to be more active in our children's lives. I spoke with one of the organization's Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and they said that they have over 100 little brothers and little sisters that are in need of big brothers and big sisters. But this is a community where we need each other. We need an opportunity for us to rally around our young people, for families to indeed get back involved. With reference to the increase in gang activities, I'll let the Commissioner speak to that. But what I can say is the Gang Violence Reduction Team, they have been active in preventive programs in the middle schools, in the high schools, and with community involvement. On Friday, I would share a ministerial statement where I'll delve deeper into some of the challenges that we're having. But again, as a community, we saw a mirror of some of the things that we need to do differently. We must accept responsibility as a collective to understand that this is our problem, and together we must fix it. I'm going to invite the Police Commissioner to speak about gangs.
Don, obviously your question is there heightened gang tension? And is that related to what's happened following shelter in place? I mean, the situation around the gang aspect is well monitored by the BPS, and we work in close partnership with Minister Kane's gang reduction team. And indeed, we prevent far more than the public are aware of. We are aware of the circumstances that happened this weekend, and perhaps they're connected to other events a couple of months ago, and we're working very hard to address that with the individuals involved, but also to prevent any retaliatory incidents. I'm confident that we've got good understanding of what's taken place, and we've increased resources across the island, and we've also increased the intelligence work that we're doing. There's one aspect that does concern me, though. We've now had 2 homicides involving knives. This concerns me extremely because also at John Smith's Bay, we had persons there with knives. The danger in carrying such weapons, particularly when they become involved in fights, and the risk of fatality is extremely high. And a focus that the BPS will be looking at is to actually deal with people that are carrying knives, because there is no excuse in law for them, and obviously they present great risk not just to others but also to that individual. So we're going to be doing a lot of work in that regard. We'll be releasing information to any persons we want to speak of, and obviously, as I've said before, that arrests are forthcoming in regards to the events of the weekend.
The government promised that new modeling data would be available, but we haven't heard anything about this for weeks. The last statement was that it needed to be shared with the opposition. Can the government please give us an update on when this will come out?
Thank you. On the issue of new modeling data, Dr. Kevin Miner's ears are likely ringing as we were having a conversation about this over the weekend. He, of course, is a volunteer. He has a full-time job over there in the United Kingdom, but he did say that he's managed to get the revised model working, and he's sharing or the particular parameters of which we want to enter into the revised model. So I think that possibly as early as Thursday we'll be able to share those things, but certainly no later than next week. Our plan is still to make sure that we expose that information so that other persons can play around with it. But I think what's key to the modeling is to update the model from the last time it was done until now, taking into account the new information of which we've learned about this virus, its mortality rate, the amount of persons that go into hospital and end up succumbing to it. Also, there's been another model which was done by Mr. Aaron Evans, dealing with our critical care restrictions as well, and that is something that can be shared with the public.
All right, thank you very much. Last week we had a stretch of 11 days with no new cases. Then we had 3 cases on Friday and Saturday. Health Minister, can you say where these new cases came from, and did any of the infected folks attend the march on Sunday, June 7th that you're aware of?
Thank you, Don. Yes, there was 1 positive case on Friday and 2 on Saturday. And those cases are still currently under investigation. And 2 of those are under investigation, and 1 is related to household transmission. So close contact.
All right, thank you very much. Can you also provide us with an update about the various technologies that will be deployed, particularly to track and trace visitors once the airport reopens to scheduled flights?
Thank you. There's a number of things. First is aforementioned for quarantine and isolation, the wristband solution, which is in use in Hong Kong, will be deployed locally. In addition, there's a number of apps which are currently being piloted within the public service, both GPS tracking and others. The fact is that there was a hope that we could use Bluetooth tracking applications, but to find a Bluetooth tracking application which is able to be used currently and that does not violate or present additional privacy concerns has been a little bit more difficult, as we've seen across the world. That has been a particular challenge. This was discussed earlier today. I did receive an update from Dennis Pitcher, who's been working on this in conjunction with Mr. Martin Walsh in the Information and Digital Technology section of the government of Bermuda, but I must admit I have not yet had a chance to read that email in its entirety today. So I'm not going to be able to provide as full as an update to the answer to the question of which you wish, except for we have received the first set of bans on island, which will be used to enforce quarantine and isolation when those particular things are needed and required. In addition to that, there are pilots that are taking place with apps in Bermuda right now, and the government is engaged in being assisted also on those particular efforts with the Bermuda First Technology Committee. And recently we had a conversation with Mr. Jadeiv of Code 441, who's looking to also try to get young people involved in those particular efforts as well.
All right, thank you. My last question, Finance Minister, last month a French court ordered AXA Insurance Company to pay a restaurant owner 2 months worth of coronavirus-related revenue losses for business interruption. Some are worried that this will open the floodgates for other businesses worldwide to file similar claims, particularly in the U.S. where juries often decide claims. Is this concern to the government considering the impact that such rulings could have on our insurance market?
Well, Don, thanks for the question. But before I answer your question, just let me give Maya the email address, which I should have remembered because it's fairly simple. All lowercase, ministeroffinance@gov.bm. To your question, Don, I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment on specific companies. What I will say is that this issue has been flagged up by industry leaders like Evan Greenberg. I think he has commented on this issue in the local press, or at least there's been a story in the local press that has been covered by the Royal Gazette, setting out his own concerns about what this could potentially do to the insurance industry. I would also draw the distinction between retail insurance, which is sold to individual customers, and what we do here, which is reinsurance or more wholesale insurance, which is basically selling insurance to insurance companies. And there's a difference. I think that there is concern, but I would leave it to the experts to flesh out kind of the issues and to work on finding ways to resolve it.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Sarah Lagan from the Royal Gazette. Actually, first a question for Mr. Hayward. Congratulations on your new position. We're talking about sort of striking a balance here, and I guess my question would be, how do you intend to strike a balance between getting Bermudians back to work and ensuring that foreigners are employed and can help to boost the economy in Bermuda?
And so certainly a balance needs to be struck. The aim of the Ministry of Labor is to increase labor across the board. And so that's Bermudian workers and non-Bermudian workers. But as we talked about re-entering into the world of work, what we want is more equitable treatment between the two groups. And so where persons are not able to re-enter into previous jobs, the Department of Workforce Development will actively be engaged in a re-employment strategy so that persons can be placed back into the world of work.
Mm-hmm. You, in your new position as Labour Minister, can you give us the latest on the BPSU negotiations with government over pay cuts for government workers? Can you give us an update?
That's certainly not a matter that falls underneath my remit, and it's a matter for the Minister of Finance.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Sarah. How are you? We continue to engage in discussions with the unions around finding common ground and a solution to the challenge that we have with respect to our projected deficit. Those conversations are ongoing.
Okay. Are there any updates expected on the rules on shopping, the second name rules on shopping? Are there any updates expected soon?
The second lane, as of today's meeting, and there are no change. The only day where there is shopping days, or the only place where there are shopping days, is regards to grocery stores for the reasons which have been previously laid out. Apart from that, everything else is open to all particular persons, and if there's a consideration made to change that by the Cabinet Committee, I'm certain that that particular information will be shared.
Okay. The large gathering at John Smith's Bay, obviously I've seen footage and there was a lot of people very close to each other. Are there any plans in place by the Ministry of Health in terms of testing? Is there any plan in response to that large gathering of, well, 75 to 100 people at John Smith's Bay?
Not directly, Sarah. I think the message that we've attempted to get across to individuals is that we do have an aggressive testing regime, and that if you have been exposed to an individual with respect to close contact, and by that I mean over a period of 15 minutes without wearing a mask in close proximity, then you should be tested. So any of those individuals that we saw on the videos that have been circulating, we would obviously encourage any of them to, if they fit that criterion. From what I saw, most were not wearing masks, and they seemed like they were in quite close proximity. We would encourage them to take advantage of the testing that is free and readily available through the pop-up testing that I've spoken about previously.
You mentioned when you were talking that standards had slipped in the last few days. Were you just referring to that incident, or is there something else you want to share?
No, part of the Health IQ, and I would again invite anyone to log on to that app, because it allows you to basically make your own observations as to whether or not you see persons complying with the physical distancing as well as the wearing of masks. And it asks you a series of questions, and those are two questions that are asked. And we've noticed that there has been a slippage in recent days where people aren't necessarily exercising social distancing like we would like, as well as wearing of the mask. And what we want to make sure that we emphasize and remind members of the public is that we've only made it to stage 3 simply because of people's compliance with the mitigating factors. And what we don't want to do is not be able to proceed to stage 3B and 4 because people are not abiding by the physical distancing requirements as well as the requirement to wear a mask, because that's how you reduce the transmission of COVID.
One more from Mr. Hayward. You mentioned a lot of cases of discrimination against Bermudians in the workforce. Is there any more detail you can give on that, like some of the worst offending sectors or anything like that?
So I believe it's a lot of perception out there that Bermudians are generally being discriminated. I mentioned that out of the 400 plus careers that came into the Labor Relations Department, only 14 were pertaining to Bermudians being discriminated, and those are all under investigation.
What will happen after that investigation? Sorry. How long is that investigation? When are the results of that investigation likely to come out?
I don't have these specific details, but we will endeavor to provide further information on the findings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. This evening, there's certainly been a lot of information that has been presented between the various ministers that have been at the podium and joined me this evening. The government continues its work and is appreciative of the vast majority of citizens in the country who continue to work with us to ensure that we can successfully navigate this particular pandemic. We'll be with you again on Thursday evening to share more information. And with that, I would say thank you to all of you and good night, Bermuda.
When we wear our masks or face coverings, you protect me and I protect you from the spread of COVID-19. But for the best protection against the coronavirus, we must wear and use our masks or cloth face coverings correctly. All persons over age 2 and who can remove their masks themselves should wear one. Before putting on your mask, clean your hands. Your nose and mouth should be covered with no gaps between the mask and your face. Do not touch the mask when wearing it. If you do, clean your hands immediately. Replace your mask when it's damp. Discard disposable masks immediately after use. or wash reusable masks frequently. When removing your mask, do not touch the front. Remove your mask from behind, discard, and immediately wash your hands. Let's protect each other from COVID-19 and wear our masks.
He was appalled that the Bermudians showed so little interest